Hey there knitters, welcome to episode 16 of Knit Talk with the Tech Editor, Sunday Special Edition. I'm Megan of the Unapologetic Knitter and I'm a tech editor. And today I wanted to pop in and continue the conversation we're having about brioche and chat a little bit about choosing needle sizes when you're going to either create a project for brioche using your own design or swatching for brioche when you're starting a new project from another designer. So this past Wednesday's episode, we talked about getting to know your brioche. We used a swatch, this one here, to look at how the different stitches present in your fabric and how they shape your fabric. And in that video, we discussed that the basis of brioche rib is ribbing, which inherently makes it very, very stretchy. You may notice in a lot of knitting patterns when you're not knitting brioche that the ribbed either edges or like collars, cuffs, or hems are often knit on a needle that is 1 or 2 sizes smaller than the main fabric needle that you're using to get gauge. That's because ribbing is stretchy, and so you want it to contract a little bit more so that it stays the same size as the fabric that you're knitting for the body of the sweater. The same is true in brioche to some extent. Brioche is a very, very stretchy fabric, so you often need to size down your needles to work it. I've got this brioche example here, and this is worsted weight yarn knit on a US 7. This is worsted weight yarn knit on a US 8. And the two fabrics are very different densities. This is knit with a smaller needle, but it's significantly larger. We won't discuss the fact that there are obviously a few more stitches on this swatch than there are on this swatch, but the fabrics behave quite differently. This stretches horizontally a little bit, but it's nowhere near the stretch that you get with a ribbed fabric. So, my general rule of thumb, actually let me back up and just say that if you are really familiar with your gauges with a certain size needle and a certain type of yarn, like weight of yarn, this will probably help you more. If you are just getting used to figuring out what your gauges are on certain fabrics, just tuck this little nugget away for future. But I wanted to use worsted weight as an example because many of us, I shouldn't say many of us, on average, the kind of accepted average is that on a US 8 needle with worsted weight yarn in stockinette stitch, we achieve a stitch gauge of about 18 stitches over 4 inches. When I knit my brioche swatch here using a US 7, so 1 needle size smaller, my gauge was 17.5 stitches over 4 inches, meaning my gauge was larger. So although I'm using the same weight of yarn and a smaller needle, my gauge is still larger. So my general rule of thumb when you are going to be either swatching for brioche or knitting a brioche fabric is go down roughly 2 needle sizes that you would from what you would normally see for that yarn. So for a worsted weight yarn, you often see a US 8 or a 5mm needle specified. When you want to use or do brioche using a worsted weight yarn, I recommend starting around a US 6 or a 4mm. I'm going to check that because I never have that in my head. Yes, so a US 6 needle or 4mm needle is a great place to start when you're swatching for worsted weight yarn in brioche. Now, if you know that you are already a tighter knitter, so when you see 18 stitches on worsted weight yarn, you go up a needle size to say a US 9 instead of a US 8 because you know your fabric, you would still consider going down 2 needle sizes. So you would want to use a US 7 or 4.5mm needle to start swatching for a project in brioche using worsted weight yarn. Now, of course, there are caveats to this because every designer wants a slightly different density of fabric. And so if you are new to brioche or you're still learning your gauges on certain weights of yarn, of course, start swatching with the needle size that the designer recommends. But my general rule of thumb and friendly tip to you is go down 2 needle sizes from what you would use in regular stockinette stitch to start swatching or designing in brioche fabric. So that's it for today's video. It was a short and sweet topic covering a little bit more about brioche. This coming Wednesday, we're going to have a new tutorial that walks you through how to tink or unknit your brioche. We're going to be looking at not only brioche knit and purl stitches and how to undo them so you maintain your shawls. The shawl, not your shawl, but the shawl around the stitch in brioche. But we also look at how to undo increase and decrease stitches to keep your fabric consistent if you have to work backwards. As always, if you found value in today's video, I would love for you to like this video and consider subscribing to my channel if you aren't already there. It helps get more people see these videos, and that way I get to share what I know with more knitters. Thank you so much for being here. Have a wonderful week and happy knitting.